All right, well, here we are again for another adventurous episode of the PowerLunch. Um, Raj, thank you for joining us.
I feel special.
You have great sandwich odds today. So
It's
no,
the
it's
company. It's the company.
all right, right. We'll go with that. Anyway, so today we wanted to have a discussion around um, basically web-based apps, applications kind of as tools, and some of the things that we've encountered with that. And if people have questions or person has questions, we could go ahead and answer those. But we do have some topics we'd like to have thrown at me, I guess. And originally it was going to be Keith doing sock puppets. That'll be a later episode. But so for today, I guess if Sheila and Pipes, if you guys have questions, go ahead and let's just kind of start the discussion, and we can let it meander where it may. And like I said, hopefully, Raj being in IT and doing IT stuff, maybe we can give you some things that are interesting or some things to think about, Raj. But if you have any questions, also just feel free to jump in at any time. Happy to do that.
Will do.
So
I'll take the mic. So do we just want to start off by, just a broad, what is web-based apps? What do you mean by that?
Sure. So, the question of kind of what does web-based apps mean to me, and really for our purposes, using what I would say web-based technology or a web-based approach to produce an application or a tool to be used in a business, and so it's using web or internet-based coding tools to produce that. In most to all cases connected to a backend database and hosted someplace in a cloud. I'm not going to say the cloud, but I'm going to say a cloud. So using cloud-based technology, which again, to us or to me is virtualization with backend storage, and having a front end, and having a front end that allows kind of a I don't know if I want to say a sexier interface, but an interface that allows us platform independence. So a lot of the applications or a lot of the tools, there's a desire to be able to use it on multiple channels. So either, an Apple iPhone, an iPad, an Android phone, those types of things. So the apps that we develop have multi-platform capabilities.
I want to apologize for being late. I had a contractor here and they were running me around. And then when I logged into Zoom, it wanted to do updates. So please forgive me.
Nice. No worries.
At the beginning.
No worries. More fun. We actually will have competition now. Raj is taking on all comers in the Great Sandwich Challenge. So anyway, so how's that? Does that answer your question a little bit? Help give you a sense of the apps that we develop? I'm going to throw another one in there. Aside from the web-based apps we do, we also do SharePoint apps. So we have a lot of customers who are using Teams, and they're discovering that there's an ability to use Teams and SharePoint to create tools in their business, and we do a lot of that. So so I think that's another space. It's a similar to a web-based app, and really it is kind of a web-based technology, but we do Teams and SharePoint development as well.
When you say apps, like what kind of productivity are you guys generating from these apps?
Well, it's kind of soup to nuts. We have applications that are used in like manufacturing, for example. Inventory control is an example. Even and for a manufacturing space, so inventory of product, but also for maintenance departments, inventory of widgets that they have on hand. We have that as well. Production support. So like even mobile, not mobile, but reader boards, screens in a production facility to communicate to people, and then crew type things. So scheduling applications is another one where maybe you have a team of people who are going out and performing a task. And we have a couple different ones that we do. So, in general, performing a task, they have an order of work to be done for that day. That work might change. So everybody who's doing the work has a cell phone. If that work changes, they can access their work queue in real time using their cell phone, and then that changes. So one of the things I'm thinking about is we did an application for a paving company, and I used to be a paver, so I relate to this stuff. So, but a crew goes out and they maybe have 3 jobs they're going to do for a day. Well, they discover that they're in this spot that actually is closer to somebody else than they thought. So now they're going to change one of those 3, right? So instead of having to go back to the shop and get all the paperwork and do those things, we created an app whereby everybody who's on that job can look at their phone. They can get the next app or the next location and all the information about that location and get directions, and it gives them Google Map directions to the next job. So they can change those things on the fly, and they don't need to bring this. And by this, I mean wads of paper. They had wads of paper in their trucks that had every piece of, pictures and all that stuff all on that paper. They've completely gone away from paper.
So I was just dealing with window contractors who were getting hurricane windows put in. And let's say they were going to come to my place on Monday, and they were all geared up for that. And then on the way here, they got an emergency call. No, we got to do this place. So they could then shift everybody there seamlessly.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And that's what that app would give them. Plus, it would give them all the relevant paperwork for that job, work orders. And so in the paving space, a lot of it is diagrams, pave this, don't pave that, stuff like that. It gives them that. And then it gives the crews the ability to take pictures and fix that to the work order too. So kind of neat stuff. But yeah, another place where it has been used is in roofing crews. Similar type of a thing where, you have a group that are going out to do something, reassigned. Now, instead of having to swing this gigantic ship and all this paper and all that stuff, they can just go. They can just do that.
Right.
So
it kind of makes it a lot easier.
Yep.
Kind of off of like the whole web-based situation that you were talking about, because it's in the cloud, or so say, take for example, like Candy Crush, like those sorts of things that are like apps and such that are through the Play Store. Are those not in the cloud?
Those would, it's kind of a combo pack, right? Because the apps that are designed for iOS or for Android, those mobile device apps have a component that sits on the device itself, and then they'll access data that's in a cloud. And this is different than that. So the what we create, it's different than that, and it's less expensive than that. So the information or the tools that we create are platform independent, would be run through a browser. And that means certain things. And part of that is that, we have to be able to deal with the variabilities we see across different browsers and those types of things. So that's one of the trade-offs. But when you start thinking about, like I had priced out creating an app for, or an actual app store app for that paving app, to be honest. And we're comparing an application that might cost, $5,000 to $6,000 to create as a web app versus $30,000. From the information I got, it was like $10,000 per. I'm sorry, it was like $15,000 per channel for iOS and Android, and then another $5,000 to $10,000 to get it approved through the app store, the Play Store. So when you start thinking about a business wanting to have a dynamic application that can be used across platform, right? Because we're thinking iOS, Windows, and Android across platform, really that web-based app that kind of uses, thinks of it as a web page, a dynamic web page, becomes a pretty cost-effective solution. Now, you might have to deal with a few warts, and that is because of the variability in the devices, right? An Android will handle a web page presentation different than an iOS, and if they don't have their phones updated, you can get a little variability. But I haven't run into a case where it doesn't work. What was that, Ken?
It's pretty standard stuff. I've had people say to me, "Oh, I can't get into this whatever on my iPad." I was like, "Well, the iPad doesn't care. It's a web browser. It's agnostic. It doesn't matter what you're using.
Right.
You have a web browser, you might get a totally different color look or something with different browsers, and everything's built pretty much on the Chrome engine now, other than Safari and Firefox."
I would say a good 90-95% is the same. I mean, it's a browser. Now, the one place that we have run into some challenges is in PDFs. Part of what we needed to be able to do was handle documents and attach PDFs to a couple of different applications. And at the end of the day, Adobe and Google don't like to play well together. So the PDFs could be a bit of a challenge, but we did get it figured out. So it's it's functional. It's functional. You don't have all the capabilities, but at the end of the day, we're just popping a PDF.
You can still read it and analyze what you have.
It displays as a PDF, and you can shrink it and do all that stuff with it. But PDFs were a little bit of a challenge. But like I said, you kind of run into some of those little hiccups where, the Android people don't like to play with the Apple people, don't like to play with the Windows people. So, yeah.
So what you're saying then is that we can build apps that would play across those boards. And initially you mentioned something about the cost that's associated with buying an app. And I'm assuming you're talking about like a scheduling app from the Play Store. And then what was like a percentage difference in price between us developing that same app that just does what that particular company needs it to do?
Right. Well, and that, so yeah, there's a lot to unravel there, but the ability to create that specific app has been important to various businesses. Now, there's general apps you can go out and get, and those can be relatively low cost, as a subscription, $100 a month, and easy access those apps. The problem with those is typically, and if we're thinking about scheduling apps, let's just talk about scheduling apps. They are one platform or another platform. So if you're a business, just use paving as an example, and let's say you have 20 people on your crew, and it's going to be half and half between Android and iOS. People using their personal phones. There's different. So if you say, well, I'm going to go with this scheduling app and it's Apple only, now half your team can't use it or won't use it, right? So there's kind of this thing where the apps that we do are platform independent. They don't care what the platform is. So like you said, it could be an iPhone, could be an iPad, could be an Android phone, could be a laptop, whatever device you have, as long as it runs a browser, it can access that tool. And the expensive piece, and I would say 100 to 200% more, so double to triple and beyond the price, is developing that application through the web store or through the app store on both Android and iOS and Apple. Yeah.
Would you say it's easier to maintain your type of app since it's web-based versus something on individual devices?
I would say yes. I mean, I've talked to several developers who are producing apps in that space, and while so if you're in an environment that involves PCI and HIPAA and those types of things, you probably want to go down the space of that type of secure app, because those applications are aggressively vetted through the app stores. There's certain standards you have to do, and they assess them. So I think that if you are in a highly secured environment and you're going to be working with highly secured information, right? That's probably the way you want to go. And those things are what make those applications so much more expensive. Mm-hmm. Now, we can do a lot more with a smaller spend on the web-based side of things, but there's going to be a little bit less on the security end of things. Now, it's not saying that it's insecure. It's not saying that it's bad, but it is saying that it doesn't have the same level of scrutiny that the other apps, the other environments would have.
I'm assuming it's run over HTTPS, as pretty much everything has to.
Yep. There's certs and exchanging that, and different, abilities to do credentials. So you have admin logins and those types of things. But again, it kind of depends on the application, and it's not like those apps would work in a HIPAA environment, because they would, but I would be concerned about like storing and accessing patient data, like those types of things.
Would it be possible to design something that was view only and you couldn't actually download? You needed to see something, but you, like PCI or HIPAA, you could view someone's information, but you would have no ability to download that or save it.
You can do so. You could do something like that where it's I just call it display layer only, where it's just displaying information, and then where you would worry about it, or where you would focus your security effort, is on the back end, on the back end database side of things. So even if you are using, because a lot of the electronic medical record stuff is cloud-based now, so you could actually create a wrapper around some of that and take advantage of that HIPAA protected app inside another app. So you could do those types of things as well. There's a lot of flexibility there, and that's kind of the way I would recommend doing it. If someone has an EMR that already has a security in it, let's take advantage of that. It's web based. We'll put a wrapper around that, but that would be the protected area.
Right.
So then, do you have ways of like tracking if any bugs were to get in there, if that were to be something that would, poke a hole in that wrapping? Do you have a way to, manage that?
Oh, I have many mysterious ways.
Could you tell us about them?
Many mysterious ways, but I can't reveal all my secrets, but
some of them.
Well, one of the things that we do, I think that when we're, a lot of times when we're producing applications for businesses, they kind of come to us with an idea of, hey, could we do this? And they articulate that. And I use a lot of different tools to storyboard that. We kind of throw it on a tool like Microsoft Planner, Trello to start with. And I call that web page visioning. We'll throw it on a mind map, and we'll talk about the functions and kind of move stuff around and figure out how we want things to interact. And then we move that into the kind of the build phase. And that's where the bug tracking and those types of things actually comes in, because that's kind of, the rubber has started to meet the road. People are using the tool. They're understanding, well, it would, part of it is this doesn't work the way it should, right? So we identify that, we get that fixed. The other part of it is, it'd be really cool if it could do this, right? So there's the bug tracking piece, and there's the enhancements piece of it that we track, and we do that via online collaboration. Honestly, usually it's through using something like Google Sheets. I actually have a couple of sheets that have those tracking capabilities in it. Then we have a way to mark off and see what items are active, what items are in process, and what items have been fixed already. And we're all on the same page with that. So that's kind of how we do the bug tracking and remediation piece of things.
And does that lead into how the app is supported?
Yep. So from there, then, as the rat moves to the snake, then there is the support channel that would come with, like, being able to call a toll-free number and say, hey, we have this, and then we would assign that out. So in this case, we have a couple of developers. If it's an issue with the app itself, then they would get a notice, support it. And then if it's hosting, then we can reach out to that organization or ourselves, because we do hosting, so we can take care of it that way. But that help desk number gives the customer the ability to have a single point of contact to get those issues resolved.
So if you're in the office managing a large crew, I mean, you're almost like one touch to keep up to date on what's going on with your crews out in the field. Like I'm in this group with Paul, and we have one guy, he's in pest control. So he could keep an eye on everybody and find out where they are. Are they getting behind? Are they on time? Are there any issues?
Yeah, we could, with something like that, we actually had, and then we took it out of the other app, a space where the crews could put a status, like at the job complete, this and that. So that person would have visibility into the status of the crews and what they're doing. And, they would know basically in real time where they were and what they're doing. And then they could reallocate that information, or they could reallocate that assignment by crew. So that's kind of an interesting piece of it, that real time and immediacy of it. I mean, part of it is, I like the example of pest control, because it's kind of like training rats, right? Because you got to train the people to do this, right? Instead of, and which to me is like, that's a simple thing, right? We just look at your phone. If you get done with this job, look at your phone, and now there's a list of where you need to go, right? So don't, that a lot of times people tend to want to overthink things, but under that scenario, yeah, we put it in, it gets updated in real time. They're sending real time information back to the person who's, kind of that air traffic controller. So yeah, no, it becomes a very data rich type of an interface.
Is it something that could, I don't know if you've designed this in or if it's possible, but I'm just thinking about, the guys out in the field, whatever the industry is, and they're running late or they're running early, as what happened with the window people. They weren't supposed to be till after 2. Can they send notifications out? Like if they're in the system and say, right to the client's cell phone, text message, we're running early, we're running late, whatever the case may be.
Yep. For this particular app, we didn't do the texting piece, but they could click on the thing to call. So if they had to call somebody, we just would have the number and have it be clickable. And then they could call them. I believe that the texting thing is just an easy extension from that, but which actually is probably a better idea. I mean, if you think about, like, you get that with DoorDash, they text when they're in your neighborhood or after they picked it up, stuff like that. So yeah, being able to create that type of an interface is not far from what we've already done.
I think the texting would be better, because if everybody sets their phone up like me, I have an iPhone, it automatically blocks a phone number that I don't recognize, and it'll dump it right into voicemail. And I might, it doesn't ring, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't make any noise, and it just goes to voicemail. So unless I'm looking at it, but if they send a text, I still get the
right.
I know a text came in.
Well, and the other thing about the texting piece is that you can create a caged response. So, we don't need to worry about grammar and punctuation and, those types of things going out to a customer. We could have a set of, planned responses. They click on it and it goes out to them.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, it's when you start thinking about the creative different things you can do with this stuff, it is pretty eye-opening. It's a brave new world.
So are you the actual coder?
I am not the coder. I am not the coder. No, I wish I was. I actually wish I was. I tend to be the vision person. I have a couple of guys I work with who are very creative individuals. And the other thing I think that's important is that we use generally accepted coding principles. So we want it to be supportable into the future. So anybody that has those skill sets should be able to look at it, look at the code, understand what's happening, and then support it. So it's not based on just one person kind of creating this custom widget type of a thing.
That and upgradability is really important. A lot of people don't think that through. They get this custom designed app, and then you're stuck with it, and you're stuck with old technology. So if you have something that's web-based, I assume that's easier to maintain that, again, that back end, so that, on the front end, they're just going click and they're going into it, and you're just reloading the data.
Right. And I mean, I'm an old enough person to remember when you had to do an upgrade to every endpoint, when you had kind of fat client stuff and you had to do changes to every endpoint stuff, and where, this is so much easier where, they have a current version of a browser and you push out your new code and it's new for everybody,
Yeah. Last time I did something like that was a write fax upgrade to about 300 people, and each client individually had to get done. Their push mechanism did not work.
Right.
And so we went out to 300 workstations with the old sneaker net.
How often do you hear that, where, well, we should be able to push this out and do it automated, should be able to, right? But when you get to practical application, maybe 60% of them work.
Yeah.
And why didn't that work? Well, it decided not to. No, it didn't decide not to. Because it's a computer.
Right.
So anyway.
Do Raj or Denny have any questions about this? Do you guys use custom apps at all, or is everything just straight out of the box, so to speak?
We usually develop quite a bit of in-house apps here at Optum. So question for you guys, have you ever played with or implemented bots into your apps? Chatbots.
Well, okay, so the reason I'm double clutching is that we have chat capabilities with our web page, but we haven't had the need to do chat bots with any of the apps yet. But I think that is something that will be coming
how would
sooner.
That be utilized?
So if we're talking for business to customer, B2C, a customer can say, okay, type in, okay, I can't find out where, I'm looking in the web page. I can't figure out where my installer is. So I'm going to chat in the chat box. Okay, can you tell me where my installer is? And hopefully, maybe if your app has location sensing built in, you can reach out to any of the installers, their phones, and say, okay, my installer is down the block, and I should be ready with clothes on to open the door, right? Something like that. Or just general questions says, okay, I need a quote for this, this, and this. And then a chatbot can go off and look in its database. Okay, the answer to this question is contact, service rep. And then the bot would say, okay, here's our customer service rep number. You can contact them or something like that.
That's interesting. So like I said, we've done the chat piece of it and separately have done the location piece of it. So, so it's marrying the two would be actually a pretty powerful thing. We have a couple of different applications that use your current location. They take that information from the phone or the device and then calculate a distance to X or Y. So one of the applications we did is, and you can actually go and look at it, called K12 Navigator from CMMA. So that's the manufacturing one, but it has a calculation from, like, if you were a student that wants to tour a business, it will calculate how many businesses are close to you with a certain number of parameters within a selected 25 miles. I think it's 10 miles, 25 miles, and 50 miles and beyond 50. So you can pick that and it'll tell you everybody who's in that radius, based on, we have a big zip code table. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea, and it's probably not too far off as far as when we'll be asked to do something like that. We've done both things separately.
A minor AI type of thing,
right?
Where it's going to be intuitive somewhat too.
Yeah, it'd have to be able to recognize kind of a set of questions, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You program it into the database, and then you have the machine learn. Okay, these are the most common types of questions. Here are the different words that looks very similar to what the question is, and it'll resolve that to the perfect answer. And if it doesn't, then it sends it off to some IT person who can retrain the program.
Right.
So on another note, how do you authenticate? Do you use like Facebook, Google, regular login? What's the typical way do you do things there?
Typically is a regular login. We have used Google login, but typically it's a regular login, right? Just kind of somebody maintaining a list of credentials.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a cost if you use like one of those, social media logins to authenticate everywhere?
My experience is there's kind of a low one-time cost or a subscription cost, depending on what you use, but it's not, what we've encountered hasn't been prohibitive.
Okay.
It's, when we're thinking about, $100 a year.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Of things.
So in general, like if I'm just an independent developer and I'm making a small version of some X whatever app, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to put it onto Play Store or the App Store, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Am I going to have to shell out $15,000 for that to be put onto those, App Store places, or no?
It's going to be close to that from my best understanding. Okay. Nobody has wanted to go through that, but yeah, there's a process for each channel. And then there's the approval process. So if you're doing the developing yourself, it would be markedly less because that assumes outsource of the application development piece, right? But then there's the cost associated with the review and approval and rework of that tool. So yeah, you wouldn't have to pay for the app development piece of that, right? But you would have to pay for kind of the assessment and approval process for each of those tool sets.
And I guess you can just drop a bunch of ads in your application, and then that's how you pay for it.
Right. If you can find sources for that ad revenue, then yeah. But yeah, so like I said, the pricing for that I was talking about really is to have it custom, to have a simple app, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a gross oversimplification, but to have a simple application developed on the platforms, on either platform, iOS or Android.
Okay.
Yep. And I worked with a couple places. One of the guys that I talked to is the owner of a local software company, RateSoft. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they do warehouse scheduling software. And they have a few different tools that they use, and they've created with in the app stores, and they do custom work in the app stores too if you wanted it. So that was one of the guys I had talked to about it. He actually gave me the most information around that.
Okay. And you said you develop apps for Teams?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, Microsoft Teams, just to confirm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yes, the short answer is yes, but really it's SharePoint. Teams is kind of a wrapper around SharePoint. Yeah. So I say Teams because it's kind of easier.
Okay.
to say it that way, because most folks don't get their mind around that Teams is kind of just a display layer of SharePoint. But yeah, so we do SharePoint development.
Okay.
If you said SharePoint, they might say, "Oh, we don't have SharePoint." But
yeah, that's exactly what happens actually.
Yeah. I believe there is a module where you can enable chatbots within Teams also, just an FYI.
I wouldn't be surprised. There are so many third-party tools that you can take advantage of and code to within SharePoint. It's actually astounding when you look at it. A lot of what we do in there, Raj, is business process automation. Mm-hmm. Things like simple as hiring and termination processes. That type of thing. Another big one we just did was a quality assurance thing for a food producer, where every time somebody would call in and have a complaint about the product, it had to go through this big resolution quality assurance process, right? So business process automation is a lot of what we end up doing within that SharePoint development.
Got it. Thank you.
So a question kind of off of something you said earlier. You were mentioning how NetVPro is able to host some of these developments. And I was trying to, find exactly what that means in a sense. Like a lot of them are just, oh, hey, you want to host this app, do it through here, instead of like what it actually means. So what does it mean? How do we do it?
Right. So, I mean, from a hosting perspective, we have the ability to do that. We have a couple of data centers, and we can host apps. We can host various things in our environment. And I think that one of the big differentiators is that, hosting is kind of a commodity thing now, right? You can go out, you can find organizations that are willing to host, and the price is cheap, and they're kind of a clandestine operation. You don't really know what you're getting. They might be up, they might be down. It's kind of they could be, I would say, kind of greasy in kind of their approach to business, where hosting isn't necessarily our core business. We do it, we offer it to our customers, but it gives you, the way I describe it, is a local throat to choke. If you're going to I can't even think of the name, beach, I don't know, they all have different names. If you're going to that type of a cloud-based hosting environment, like, you don't know who you're talking to. They may or may not care. It's a commodity. So if you have an issue with your website, they might talk to you about it in 2 weeks. They might talk to you about it next week. They might not talk to you about it at all, right? So there's kind of this whole element of having somebody that you can get a hold of, you can talk to our help desk, and you can have that resolution piece. Because like I said, the technology behind hosting and doing hosting, there's not a lot of romance to it. There's some steps you got to go through, but I mean, it's a commodity item. The secret sauce there is really having somebody that you can get a hold of, especially if you're somebody who's not super well versed in it, right? If hosting is, if you understand it, great. One of those bargain basement third-party providers might be great for you because you can handle all the moving pieces. But if it's not something you're well versed in, having somebody who you can pick up the phone and, you can call our help desk, or you can call me, those types of things. I think that's something to think about in the whole process, because if it's an app that's important to your business, that 3-week gap between when you first make the call and when the provider cares about you can be disastrous. So that's
also, Keith, my desire is to have what I would call a single point of failure, a single point of contact.
Right.
So something goes wrong. I've been in situations when I was running a network that everybody's pointing fingers in one direction, and I was like, oh, it's not our fault, it's their fault, it's not their, and you just go in this circle of pushing the blame.
Exactly.
But if you design it, you host it, you have everything, then I just go to Keith and say, Keith, it's not working, and you fix it.
Yep. And even if you
don't realize how important that is.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that I will run into customers who are so frustrated with what they have going on now. They're just beside themselves, and having that single source of someone to talk to who I don't mean to get Pollyanna, but who cares about their business. I mean, is really important.
So I must apologize again. My dog has entered the room. If you hear any grunting or snorting, it is not me. So again,
the same with my wife. If my wife enters the room and you hear any grunting, it's not me.
Well, I see that we are coming up on our 45-minute mark here. So, yeah. Thanks, Ken, for the easy segue into the sandwich program. The match race between Denny and Raj. And so, Piper, do you have that? Because I was hoping that Keith would then regale us with Bigfoot stories while Piper is putting that together.
Yes, I do actually have it pulled up. I can just share my screen and we can see who is the lucky winner for today.
And where are you located in Florida?
Where am I located?
Yeah.
In Wellington, Florida.
Okay. So I was just telling Paul that I didn't realize this, but West Palm, which you're not too far from West Palm, are you?
No, not at all.
Yeah, West Palm is a Bigfoot hotspot. Did you know that? Skunk ape hotspot.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, one of the biggest, best known sightings ever happened there. 2 cops shot one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea. The reason I thought about it, I'm not always contemplating Bigfoot. But the reason I thought about it was Paul's doing Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts now. Mm-hmm. And I could just picture Paul out in the woods camping.
We have more problems down here. Would be gators and wild boar is a big problem.
My son who now lives in Michigan, but he was in Fort Myer, and he was training for a Ironman deal, and he was out running, and a gator walked in front of him and freaked him the heck out. Yeah. I suppose for him, for down there, that's about like seeing a black bear up here, you know.
Yeah.
I said, "What are you scared of an alligator for?" I have no fear of an alligator. I said, "Here's the deal: if you get chased by an alligator, just run in an S curve. They can't catch you. Okay. Just got to make the S." All right, let's go ahead, Pipes.
All right, here we go.
We got drama here. We got the 3-way battle royal.
Drum roll,
sandwich
please.
Cage match.
Raj.
I don't know about that.
Holding the record.
He is holding the record.
Okay, I'm going to make a suggestion. In the future, why don't we just put Raj's name on there?
We need to get Raj on those big Aaron Rodgers discount double check things that he can do, and he does that with the championship belt.
And we'll have to find one where we can just, like, the more you win, the smaller the pie piece gets.
That's all good for me. That's fine.
Raj did a great job. Did a great job asking questions today. So I think he gets A++ bonus points for that. Thank you very much, Raj.
You're welcome.
And if anybody has questions about apps or, wants help with it, or like I said, including SharePoint stuff, just let us know. That SharePoint is kind of exciting. That's an interesting one. We didn't talk a lot about SharePoint, but that's an interesting space. Maybe we'll do another show on that and get a couple of our guys in to talk about it, but there's a lot of interest around that right now. So very good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.